Hello and a warm welcome to Federal's special program, Capital Beat. Manipur has been reeling under violence for more than a month now. There have been reports of arson and violence from many districts of Manipur. The reason being that there have been clashes between the Kuki ethnic community, which resides in the hills, and the dominant Methi community, which lives in the lowlands. The reason, of course, being resentment over economic benefits and quotas in government jobs and education to the hill districts. But of course, the immediate provocation, of course, is the demand for the ST status to the Methis. Now, Prime Minister's silence has been stunning. Amit Shah, the Home Minister, was there in Manipur, but so far, the situation seems to have gone completely out of hand. And the million-dollar question right now is that can there be an amicable solution to the Manipur problem? Joining me now is a very special panel. We have Dr. Pauthung Haukip. Let me tell you, Pauthung Haukip is a Kuki himself. He belongs to the Kuki community. And currently, he is the Associate Professor for Linguistics at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. Dr. Haukip, welcome to the Federal. Then we have with us Dr. Bimal Okoijum, who belongs to the Methi community and is also from JNU, and he represents the School of Social Studies in JNU. Thank you, Dr. Bimal, for joining. And we have senior journalist Monideepa Banerjee. Thank you so much, Monideepa. And we have our senior journalist Samir Purkasa from the Federal. Thank you, Samir, so much for joining. Now, let me begin with Dr. Bimal Okoijum, who is a Methi. And of course, the immediate provocation has been the demand for the ST status to the Methi community. Now, I want to really understand from you that where is the actual problem? Why is this resentment simmering on the ground and simmering to a level where things have gone totally out of control?
See, I think you need to go beyond the ST demand, okay? There's been long grievances, at least perceived or real, sense of being discriminated and experience in terms of development experience. There has been a grievances among many of these tribal groups, okay? And one of the discourses, with rightly or wrongly, which I have been arguing, is that sense of injustice or deprivations or development, underdevelopment's argument has been sort of fixed to the Meiteis of the valley. The discourse is shaped like that. So the Meiteis have become a villain in that sense, the oppressors, the one who usurps things. That discourse has been going on for decades, okay? So I think that is the background behind which you have these suspicions and all of that. It was already there. This has been for decades among the tribal communities. My only argument is that when you discuss developmental, differential development patterns in the thing, there are other logical, rational factors that one must flag off, such as it is known among the economists, there is something called the topographical reasons for underdevelopment. There are a lot of studies how topography influences the development patterns. And along with that, you also have a demographic dimensions in development programs. Say, for example, if you have a policy of the government, there's so much, if a village has this much population, then you can have this plan. If it is less than that, you cannot have it. So that's a kind of a top-down approach. Thankfully, in the recent times, the people have been talking about topographically sensitive planning, bottom-up planning system, and all of that one. But so this is a demographic reason is there. Then most important is law and order situation. You know that Manipur has been a theater of armed conflict, especially in the hills with the Nagas since the mid-50s, with the armies and so on. So if you look at these factors, it is bound to impede. In fact, the development overall, the state is also impeded because of that one. And lastly, but not the least, the important factors which the economists know very well is the neo-patrimonial systems. You know, this is a very, not a modern economic order where the institutions are not impersonal. They are very deeply personalized. These people, you know, politicians think that they own. In the Weberian sense, you know, they said modernity is marked by a split between the administrator and the material means of administration. In the patrimonial system, these people who get access to the wealth and power of the state thinks that they are the owner. So you can these corruptions and all that. So these are objective factors that must be brought into account. Unfortunately, neither the tribal nor the Meiteis have flagged off on this thing. It's been arguing back and forth or accusing the community each other. Tribal elites have usurped the thing, or the Meiteis have usurped, instead of looking at the hardcore economic
Dr.
factors.
Kamal, whom will you hold accountable? Will you hold the
No,
tribals
that's why
accountable that they
I'm
have
just
not been
giving the
able to
background so
their
that,
demands?
program like this, so that the how we can proceed further is also going to be determined by this kind of an outlook. So my first appeal is decommunalize discourses on development. Look at the hard facts of economics, including the corruption and the elitisms. If there is any underdevelopment or differential patterns in development, it must be objectively addressed without communalizing it. I must also share, I have disclosed this only once in a television. I'm sharing this the second time. I have lobbied with Siri Ibobi around 2012 that please set up a high-level committee to look at these grievances of the tribal people on these development issues on the line of such a committee. In fact, he announced, but I was told that some of his cabinet colleagues, including from the tribal communities, seemingly have objected to that one. It didn't work it out. I said there must be an informed way. This was in 2012. Similarly, I have lobbied with this present CM in his first incarnation. I said, please start on the line of such a, please do it, because you need to address this objectively as well as also to address this perceived or real sense of discrimination. But none prefer. So what happened is that this grievances is at the base of the mistrust. So what happened is, then you have also brought up with the sense that this is our land, your land, because this is a particular conception of a land which is rooted in certain discourses of the colonial as well as some community sense of land ownership. So that is why this split between, instead of looking Manipur as an organic, if you look, Nagaland and Manipur, just give me 1 minute so that I can clarify this, so that what can we think about the future. See, I have said that Manipur is a part of a mountainous region. See, class 9 textbook in geography will tell you that it is a mountainous region like the Nagaland, Mizoram, and all of that one. So a lot of valleys. It's not only the Imphal Valley. There are a lot of valleys like all mountainous regions. So your sense of valley versus hill is, in that sense, is a little dicey in that sense. The relationship between Imphal and Churachampur or Imphal or Ukhrul is not the same as Banaras' relationship with Uttarakhand or Guwahati's relationship with Aizawl or Kohima. So that's the topography that we need to know. So this fact was taken into account by the Planning Commission when they divided hill state and those state with hill areas. So Manipur was classified as a hill state. So it was planned, yet this false dichotomy of hill and valley has been continuing. So these divides, in the light of these discourses of discrimination and the split between these two, what happened is that ST demand is seen by the tribal communities as a step to usurp our land. So there is a legitimate fear on that part. Okay, that fear is there. That's why they react, they respond. But at the same time, you must also know that Meitei's major concern for demanding ST, as I studied them, is because this hardly 8-10% everybody get access to it. This, once the Asian highway opens, railway opens, it will be usurped by outsiders. So they think that by converting themselves to ST, this area can be scheduled and it can be sort of protected. Far more than the thought of buying lands. Elites can think about buying lands, but masses will never. And in the mountainous region across the globe, the tendency is to come down from the high ridges to the middle ridges and so forth. It happens in Nagaland, it happens in Mizoram. So you see, understanding these are the kind of misinformed, not talking it out properly, old prejudices and ill-informed discourses. So what has sparked of this? Last one, but remember again, there is something specific about Churachampur also. Nowhere this violence happened except in Churachampur. Why is it Kuki and Meiteis have it? So there is also this lurking suspicion that there are a lot of Kuki infiltration from outside, blah, blah, blah. So that fear is there among the Meiteis, rightly or wrongly. But that's why we need to address it in a systematic, without accusing or throwing mutt against each other. And then my suggestion is that just as Mizoram does it, we must also take take care of the refugee issues in a proper constitutional institutional mechanism. Here, I will hold the government of India responsible for not taking steps. The Mizoram government is doing it on its own will because he has a different base. It's all cookie chain. It is a Lusai one. Manipur has a complicated picture of the Nagas and the Meiteis and so on. So if the government takes that kind of a position, he will be again caught by the other two camps. But I think once the government of India takes that decision, I think all the states must follow that. I think it must be done. And so these kind of things must be, instead of accusing each other, check it, how far is that illegal immigration is an issue or not? How far the refugees to be handled? What is the nature of the development? I think that possibility of an objective discussion has lost. That's why you have this violence.
Right. And obviously, from what you're saying, that this kind of a discussion is not taking place. The government is not trying to resolve the problem the manner in which it should. Now, let me come to you, Dr. Haukip. What is the problem? People are saying that, there's a clash between the Kukis and the Meiteis. But what the basic problem is, and it has been simmering for quite some time from what Dr. Bimal is saying, why is the government not able to talk to all the stakeholders? It's very clear that this dialogue is not happening. There is a complete lack of dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Nilu, for inviting me to your show. So slightly contrary to what Khoizam has said, I do not see this current flare-up, communal flare-up of the sort that we have seen in the recent past 50 days cannot be traced to what you call historical time or very long stretch of time. I don't see in that way. Of course, there were lots of militancy in the state, and I don't see even militancy is responsible to the current flare-up. So what I see as a major contributing factor for the current flare-up is very recent. I see it only with the development in the past, not even 2 years, about 1.5 years, the situation has gotten so bad. So prior to this, some of the concerns that Khoizam raised, such as development and what you call topography, etc., to my mind, people in a way, though they may not be satisfied, they have become immune to, they have realized certain things that hills cannot be developed to that far extent. And there is not a focal point of resentment, according to my mind. So what is propelling this current, flare-up is, to my mind, the kind of narratives that has been built up very, very recently. This is the real problem to my mind. So what is this narrative that has been building up? I could not blame all the Meitei community, or nor do I want to participate in the blame game here. But we must put things into perspective in order for us to be able to envisage some kind of peace model or what kind of possibility. No, we do not see any possibilities as yet. So we need to put certain things in perspective. So these perspectives, if you allow me.
But But Dr. Haukip, if you could elaborate a bit on the narrative.
I am going to there. I'm going to elaborate on the narrative. So in the past 1.5 years or so, what I see is that, of course, Manipur is a highly pluralistic culture where three dominant communities, the Meiteis, Kukis, and the Nagas, live together, and we are in a way. And then, fortunately, Manipur for the past, 7 years during the last regime has seen lots of progress. There was healthy competitive labor of discourse, not only in sports, also in whatever, even in education. And students don't need to go outside. And somehow Manipur has been a very, very safe place. But recently, what has led to this turmoil is what I call the narrative. The narrative, which I feel is that there is some growing, renewed sense of awareness from some section of the Meitei community, who feel that, in the word of some of the scholars, including Khoizam, they've been boxed into this small valley, which they call 9 or 10%. So I am also fully aware that land pressure, even arguing for land pressure, but these are certain realities. But the way in which these narratives has been allowed to sustain for a long time Initially, we thought that, okay, in a pluralistic society such as Manipur, people keep on speaking this and that's how we thought, okay, these are all done for some kind of political mileage, or sometimes community leaders, student leaders, or whatever, social leaders, they use such language from time to time. But now these sustained kind of narratives that they feel that they are boxed into the small valley, and somehow there is an element of assertion, fresh assertion for a certain section of the Manipur. And the cookies I see are just a victim to that propaganda or hatred, that assertion, or what you call it, hatred language that has been perpetrated by certain section of the community, including some of the so-called powerful politicians. So to my mind, that is the flare up, and not so much with the kind of development that is lacking in the hills, or not about the topography, etc., etc.
How are you hinting at the fact that this the Meitei community is being supported by the center or by the state government in a way that, you know, they are emboldened, and that is why all this is happening? Or who is spreading this narrative, or this particular narrative you're talking about? From where is this narrative being spread?
Yeah, that is the point that I wanted to further stress upon. So the narrative such as, so what is a narrative? We have to first understand about the narratives. So firstly, before entering into narratives, at least as Khoizam has put it, sometimes historical facts are very, very important for us to understand these narratives. So to my mind, and to the knowledge of many of the scholars, Manipuri and the Kuki, we belong to a very close ethno-linguistic family, okay? So there is the historical or pre-historical, not the historical, but pre-historical affinities that the two communities had held for a very, very longest of time. Now, these historical ties are no longer playing out in the field. So people have become more aware that somehow their land has to be protected. That awareness has grown far and wide. And this awareness in the name of poppy cultivation. So earlier, in the name of this assertionist, assertionist or expansionist policy, the Kuki, by the of their geographical settlements, they settled in the foothills of Manipur. So in a sense, to my mind, the Meiteis are not deliberately targeting the Kukis, but because we happened to be at the foothills of the foothills of the mountains, so we become the natural enemy of that expansionist policy that some section of the communities have held. And in order to fulfill that expansionist policy, to my mind, they have labeled us. They have de-brandized us or brandized us with certain terms like poppy cultivators, like immigrants, then drug holders, etc., etc. Yeah.
Mr. Hauki, this poppy cultivation has been going on for quite some years, and this action against the so-called war against drug was initiated by the present regime even during its last tenure. So what happened this time that this has become such a big issue?
So this has become such a big issue in the current time, and the Kukis are prey to this expansionist policy. This expansionist policy, the kind of notion that Khoizam put of land pressure, we agree. But instead of achieving all this realistic situation in which Manipur live, instead of addressing them through legal means, through constitutional means, that they feel there is a kind of chauvinistic feeling that has emerged from certain section of the people, and they got emboldened that unless we do this now, then never. So these kind of growing of sort of mind has engulfed certain section of the people. I would not like to have name calling in this show, but this is to my mind that the Kuki are just mere victim of the expansionist policy among the Meiteis, which was never before, but which has been seen with a more radical force in the recent time.
But Dr. Haukip, if you're talking about this expansionist police, this police cannot move any steps further if they do not get the backing of the center or the state government. What I want to understand from you is that this expansionist policing, in whatever name, you know, in the name of identity assertion or whatever is happening on both sides of the hill and the valley, it can't be without the backing of the center or the state government. What do you really have to say to this?
So if you can let me complete. If you can revisit some of the discourse that has that are available in the public domain, so that is the political discourse. I also mentioned some very powerful political people of responsible political status. They have been rampantly without any guarding of language. So there is some sort of loose use of this language and brandizing these people as poppy cultivators, as encroacher, and so on and so forth, without really looking into the constitutional possibility in which the situation where the majority Manipur are boxed in the so-called in the language of the Khoisam and others have been boxed into this small valley. This could have been constitutionally addressed. Absolutely. And I don't see ST as the the focal point of this contention. To my mind, this ST demand is all clubbed together under what I call the assertionist and expansionist policy of the certain section of the state. And let me complete the line and supported. There is an implicit support that these people group enjoy, and in the name of this, so this has been enlisted upon the cookies, and we are what we call the victims of today's expansionist policy.
Okay, Manipur, you were saying something, and then I'll go to Samir.
I have two quick questions. One is that, is it true that if a cookie person buys land in the valley, that land can never be bought back by the Métis? Is that correct? That's one question.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
That's correct, is it?
Yeah.
So, which is why perhaps a sense of being sort of completely, pushed out or elbowed out or having their land. Perhaps that is a problem.
That is why I say the land issue. Land is a very contentious issue everywhere, especially in Infa Valley. It's a contentious issue. And this issue can be dealt properly through constitutional means. What I'm questioning today is the manner in which the so-called people who propagated or followed this expansionist policy had resorted to. I am only having a problem with the method in which they have resorted to. I'm not against whatever land or whatever issue that they have. This can be constitutionally discussed.
The people who propagated this expansionist policy, do they have any political backing? We have to identify the problem, otherwise you're never going to find a solution.
Yeah.
So if you're not going to
be hope this is question to me before you come. So definitely without a political backing of this could never have happened. And implicitly from day one, everyone has been telling that the state government, and in the words of the chief ministers, if you listen to some of his statements, these are very, very inflammatory speeches that he has made. And this has caused some kind of very concern among the cookies. We accept that, okay, we reside in the hills. We have a slow pace of progress. This we have been somehow immune to us. And I don't think this is what has led to the current flare-up.
Okay, so far from whatever I have understood, Samir, I'll come to you now, that there is a deep sense of alienation as far as the cookies are concerned. There is a sense of victimhood as far as the cookies are concerned. Land is the major problem. There is a problem with the narrative, the manner in which name calling is being done, what Dr. Haukip was explaining. But the anger which is simmering against the BJP leaders very, very clearly shows that the sitting chief minister and also the leadership from the center have not been able to resolve the problem, or they are unwilling to do it for certain reasons. What is the sense you get from the ground?
Yeah, see, this land problem, the poppy cultivation, these are, of course, these are issues, but these are not new issues, and people were living with these issues for years now. So this time what happened is that particularly during the second term of Mr. Viren Singh government, immediately he took some two or three steps which are perceived by the cookie communities as selective targeting of them. I'll just give you one instance. In January this year, Mr. Ivovi Singh made a statement that poppy cultivation is taking place only in 3 districts, and the districts he named are all cookie dominated districts. But ironically, interestingly, just 1 month back in December, the same chief minister had said launch a policy to dissuade the farmers from poppy cultivation for 9 districts, nine hill districts, including the areas dominated by the Nagas. So suddenly this time, he had changed his stand and started, identifying the cookies as the only poppy cultivators. Then this this NRC policy, the government has decided to, go for NRC in Manipur, which has again, created a kind of impression that there is an influx of illegal migrants from Myanmar, which is about to surpass the majority population. So these are some of the recent decisions which has created a kind of racial profiling, and these narratives which the state government started pushing. Unfortunately, many people in the valley started subscribing to it, and this has raised to Meitei identity assertion as we had never seen before. And on the other hand, the cookies were also started feeling insecure, and these two competing emotion has clashed. So this is basically this kind of identity politics that went wrong.
Okay, so you're saying that the identity politics has gone wrong. Of course, the ST status is the immediate provocation, but there have been a number of issues which have and the governments, whether it's a state or the center, they've not been able to set up a proper dialogue process. Now, coming to you, Dr. Bimal, again, that what is the amicable solution? Can there be an amicable solution to these problems which we have just discussed? What is the first step which should be taken by the state or the central government?
See, I think I'll get back to some of the issues that Pauthang Haokip had raised. Just use these vocabularies very carefully when you are emotionally charged. And as a person who is trained in social science, I believe and I trust myself that I have the capacity, what we call it, reflexivity, to understand why my position, where is it coming from? Is it something to do with my ethnicity or my training in a particular discipline or my ideological orientation? I'm pretty aware of my position, where it's coming from. So we have to be in that sense of control of what you are speaking and what it might mean. And similarly, you try to understand the other perspective. So let me clarify beyond this, for any observer to your program, I think Monidipa has asked a beautiful question, which is important. Please distinguish schedule area, hill area, tribal land. These are not one and the same, both in terms of its legal parameters and political and historical uses. Schedule area is not necessarily tribal area in that sense, hill areas. Hill areas is not necessarily tribal land. If you legally define tribal land, what means where the tribal has the right to property to reside. So in that sense, what the Monidipa is asking, all those tribal settlement, all those pata land held by an ST is a tribal land.
Then that brings that brings us, Dr. Bimal, that brings us to the main question that
that is why, because otherwise you are talking.
Is there a political will, Dr. Bimal?
No, that is what I'm saying, it without realizing the nature of the problem, how you go ahead with a solution. That's why I'm saying it. Clarify these issues. So the land owned by the tribals cannot be bought back. It requires a special permissions and so on and so forth. So tribal land is where they own. So the scheduled area is a very different concept. And hill area is a legal definitions flowing from some constitutional provisions. So please clarify these issues. So in that sense, you remember that before these land laws and others were there, Meiteis can settle in the hills. The movement in the colonial time, there are Meiteis settlement areas. It is not massive because I told you in the mountainous regions, people will come down. If you see even the settlements of the tribal people, it's from, if you see track down from 1940s, 50s, it will be all coming down. Look at even the development of the Churanchampur as a Churanchampur is barely 130 meters. It is an extension of the same oval-shaped valley in Manipur, geographically speaking. So you understand these settlement patterns and you will understand what is tribal land, what is this. And that is something that you keep in mind. The narrative as if it is something like a land is God has given you this. It's not. It is the constitutional provisions and all the lands are not tribal land in that sense. At the end of the day, legally speaking, land belongs to the state, including sixth schedule judgment by Supreme Court clearly states that all land belongs to the state. It flows from the Roman law. India follows that. Supreme Court judgment affirm it in the case related to this tribal land and tribal area. So please clarify on this. Second part, the notion of an expansion. I'll come to the political part because the tricky part is that many people don't discuss. You are only binary between cookies and Meiteis. They are much more complicated. If you want, give me 1 minute, I'll disclose it here.
Sure.
Because you are looking for it, then you will have to handle it. It's a risky part of the discourses that we don't normally mention about these things. So you listen to these issues first. So these are discourses have been wrongly framed. Indigenous, I've objected because the moment you use indigenous, you're going to differentiate between native and the other. And this will jeopardize some of our citizens. That's what I've argued in Karan Thappar's argument. You see, and not because everybody belongs to the same ethnic group, you don't mean that they are not, all should be citizens. All Bengalis cannot become Indians. All Punjabis cannot become Indians. All Tamils cannot become Indians. You understand that one. So therefore, you need to have maintained what is citizen and non-citizen. Resolve that. Vocabulary have been mixed up. Now, the last one, which I would like to touch. So there is nothing expansionist about Meiteis in that sense. Nobody is expanding. It is ulta. It's the other way around. People are coming down more and more and residing in the valley area. Check the valley, the number of tribal, settlements across the years. You have the record in government and village record. Check it. The expansion is not the Meitei. It's the other way around. So let that issue. What is spark of, I think, Pautang has given a hint. Many people miss this point. All this issue began among the political class. They must be having their own contestation among them. They are using it, emotions of the people. All of them have either militia or armed groups supported by them. Check all the cookie organization and these MLAs, this is available everywhere. Somebody's wife is somebody's MLA, somebody is doing all kinds of things. So don't think that our politicians are holy cows. And the same thing applies for the Meiteis as well. There have been histories about armed groups being associated with politicians. There have been, governors report against politicians in the past. And similarly, I wouldn't be surprised if any of the Meiteis groups have their own groups of people, which is on the line of a militia kind of a thing. I will not rule it out. But please remember that. They were all dancing together in Kut festival, which is a cookie festival, all the politicians. Then they sort of, awaken or the sleeper cells, they're all background through which they win election. In fact, one cookie underground group have said that BJP, he helped BJP, the group have, this is already in the news, you must have already come across, that BJP was held by them. So don't think that our mainstream politicians are holy cows, whether it is in the hills or in the valley. And their fight is a fight where you are using the civilians. And I, as an intellectual, as a civil society member, will not be part of fueling that war. I'm very clear on this. So I would request, whether it is a cookie or a Meitei intellectuals or civil society leaders, please speak for the people. Do not join this political fight. They were dancing and happily enjoying together in festivals, the spoil of the national wealth, which they get access to. Their followers enjoy that, not the common people, whether it is hill or valley. And the crisis, they will be the one when they come together, it will be peace. And the lost people whose lives have been lost and houses have been destroyed, they will carry the scar in their heart, the hatred. It will be a tough job now that, ek kahawat hota hai na, I don't remember completely that Urdu wala jo na, Rahim dhaga prem ka mat toro. You remember that, the thread of love, don't break it. If it breaks, even if you join it, there will be a dark in that one. That unfortunate thing has happened. It's going to be a long haul for a peaceful existence. But I think we should be using right vocabulary. Our future should be very clear. You can't go on fighting and fighting and fighting.
Absolutely.
Do not create a Lebanon out of Manipur. Do not create a partition. Let me finish this. If anybody mainstream India doesn't understand, think of Delhi. You ghettoize all the Muslim in Jamia Nagar, lifted anywhere where the Muslim is there. You partition. You think that they will solve a problem. It will not.
Right.
It will always do.
Yes, Dr. Allow me to interrupt you. Yes, I was coming to Monadeepa, that Monadeepa, there is a clear sign of polarization in the Northeast now, in Manipur also, whether it's a land issue, whether it's identity assertion, but it's very, very clear that the political class has tried to misuse these emotive issues, brought up these issues. Now, is BJP trying to reap the same benefits, what the kind of benefits it sees in North? And it seems that, the same communal agenda, that one size fits for all, it's the same communal agenda which they are trying to implement across the country. And now it's Northeast which is flaring up because of this communal agenda. Do you really see that as happening?
Well, after the 3rd of May and the violence that followed immediately, you will remember that there was a concerted effort to project this whole problem as a communal problem. Hindus versus Christians, and so on. But I think all of us on this panel, and hopefully everybody in Manipur, will agree that, the communal issue the communal hook didn't really, land successfully. This is an ethnic problem that needs a different kind of treatment. So the BJP, if it was trying to create a communal situation and then benefit from it, it has clearly drawn a blank. At least that is my view. I have not been to Manipur in this latest round of violence, but from observing what's going on there, now even nobody is even talking about the communal angle to the problem. So that's a positive, that at least there's no communal clash, and the BJP's plot, if that's what they were trying to do, has failed. But what is alarming is the way, as you started, Nilu, the political class in Delhi seems to have abandoned Manipur. I mean, Mr. Amit Shah went there for a few days. He did say a lot of things, do a lot of things. He left, and that's it. His 15-day deadline for delivering results is gone. I mean, I saw him yesterday in Gujarat, visiting people affected by this Biparjoy cyclone. Maybe he has too much on his plate, but how can you just forget a state? I mean, I would like to ask the two professors, do you feel abandoned by Delhi? I mean, as it is, there's this whole mainland and Northeast forgotten issue. But after the way Manipur has been handled by the center, I think that is really, really the more question.
That's a very significant point which you have raised. And Dr. Haukip, I'll come to you now. Many army veterans and a lot of people from the civil society have written, they've come out with a statement also. And I remember one of the tweets by an army official yesterday, which said that, Prime Minister, please intervene. Our state is leaderless. That was quite a poignant tweet which I saw. Do you really feel that there is a sense of abandonment and the center has left the people of Manipur to solve their problems on their own? Do you have this kind of a feeling when you see the current situation?
Yeah, before I answer to your straight question, so the kind of concerns about the way I speak, this is my biological speech and I cannot do anything about it. And there is no communal angle that I look at. All that I am looking as an outsider or even an insider or even as an academician is that whether you call it assertionist or whether you call it expansionist, but what I'm trying to, terminology is different nature, but what I'm concerned about is the kind of build-up of narratives in the past 1.5 years back. That is what has led to this current crisis, was the point that I made. Now, so coming to your. Who
will you hold responsible for this narrative? Whom are you holding responsible?
These narratives has come from political class. and especially some of the tweets and all the internet YouTubes and channel. This has come from politicians, including our chief minister. So there is no denying about that. Now coming to your question, whether Manipur has been left. So we feel that it's left. Now the question is, we are not asking about humanity. That's something that I wanted to stress upon, the human concern. Somehow in the course of our discussion, this has been lost out. So now Manipur has been lost out. So if this kind of violence has taken place in some part of India, the whole world, the whole TV showroom, whole day, whole night will be debating about this, and then this will be a big national, international news, because this is occurring only in the smallest corner of Manipur, and somehow media are not able to penetrate it, because people are dying on the ground, and then there is a lot of hardships. Parents, children, they lost their life, and a child is alive, mother is lost. So such human agony, I would not like to further brief upon that. So somehow we feel a sense of depravity from the center, and the way, in the manner in which there is a complete silence from our prime minister. Something, if our prime minister of his stature speak out, I think, to my mind, this will heal lots of wounds and hatred among the people, but this is not happening. So now coming back to the point that I wanted to make. So all these flare-up, the causes that have led to the flare-up has not been raised or has never questioned during election time. So I was wondering, where were all these politicians and also some so-called even civil society who blame them, who blame the Kukis as poppy cultivators, or what you call immigrants or drug lords? Where were they? Where were they? They should have expressed it during this election time. So during election time, everybody have been using, even the so-called Kukis terrorists. So during election time, nobody talks about Kukis are terrorists, Kukis are immigrants, Kukis has come from Myanmar, Burma, you are trade lords, you have been indulging in all this kind of. Nobody has spoken out this during election. So this conclude me that.
Mr. Hauki, as you pointed out, nobody raised these issues during election. In fact, we have now, lots of this thing. A letter has surfaced wherein a chairman of a Kuki militant group had written to the Home Minister claiming how his group helped BJP to win elections in 2017. And we all know this cozy relation the Kuki militant groups and the ruling BJP regime had, because many of the MLAs, their relatives are in fact militant leaders. So now, and these relations were going on for quite some time, and it seems to have a very cozy understanding. So what suddenly went wrong? Is it also some kind of by the Kuki MLAs, their political assertion led to this clash?
Okay, if you keep interrupting me, I will tend to lose some of the vital points that I would like to make. I request you that at least some bear me out until such time I complete my point. So now, if you look all these incidences from 3rd May to this in isolation, then we are not going to lead anywhere. So we cannot look this in isolation. So that is why I was beginning my speech, my talk with a genesis to this story. So the underlining genesis that I have underlined is not so much so about
this online existed for quite long, and it didn't create problem. Why?
That's what I'm coming to your point. So the full line that I'm saying is that this flare up is not because of economic deprivation and so on and so forth. Of course, there are also some kind of concerns that have been raising for many years, but the immediate and so-called the build-up for 2 years or 1 year is about the kind of narrative that has been created by the political class, supported by some section of the society. Now, if you look into peace installment, so then we lose the track. And it is not so much about this. Now, the question is, why were these not raised during election time? In election time, people were very happy, and then everyone said, we are all one people, and then you ask question, people are dancing. But now, immediately, what has led to this question is that after the election has gone by, now there is why the timeline that I have drawn. Once election was over, within a few months, this issue of land encroachment, this issue of foreign immigrant, the Métis, to my mind, they have never raised, according to my knowledge, they have never raised before Cookies, even the so-called immigrants or foreigners. These were not raised by the Metis before. These were very recent phenomena, just raised within
Exactly.
soon after the election. And this has become so, pronounced, and it has become consistent over the years. And what has become verbal, rhetorical, sides has now converted into reality.
No, but Dr. Hawkip, tell me, Amit Shah also came to Manipur. He was there for a few days talking to the people. Then he also spoke about peace committees, which again didn't come to fruition, and it didn't have any consequence. Now, the point is, you were saying that if Prime Minister breaks his silence, that he talks to the people, will that really resolve the problem, the current situation?
Yeah, the Prime Minister talking
Supposing
to...
if from some part of the country he breaks his silence on Manipur, is that
any breaking of silence, from our honorable Prime Minister is going to have some amount of impact. That is for sure. Then I said it will have an impact, but thus far we are still awaiting for him to break the silence. There is another issue. Now coming back to the point that I'm trying to make is that this narrative, had it been done very more carefully, instead of raising this narrative, had it been done what you call administratively or bureaucratically, or it has been done in a more political or unconstitutional manner, it would have not resulted in the manner in which it has resulted. Now that it has resulted in a violence, so much so at the scale and manner which we cannot imagine today, now even talking about any possible negotiation between the two communities is far, far dream. So now, by now, we must have come out that the Bukis have been demanding separate administration. And now this is very logical in my mind, in the sense that this violence, which could have been stopped in day 1 or day 2, has been implicitly allowed to go on, and now it is unending, and it may become worse and worse. So when the two society has become so divided, so the only way is we part the two ways, and at the first go, this may sound very difficult on both, at least from the majority side, but later on, once they part their way, then it will lead to a healthy economic ties between them, and then later on, as equal citizen of India, we'll get back to our normalcy. But as of today, I don't see who will break simple breaking of silence or simple peace committee. I don't think, to my mind, is going to solve. At least some cake has to be given.
Okay. My last two questions to Samir and Monadipa. Monadipa, I want to come to you first. That you remember when UPA government was in power in the center, BJP was in the opposition, and it used to accuse UPA that, look, they have completely derelicted the northeastern states. They are not taking care of that. But when Manipur elections were there, Prime Minister was the first to, attend the swearing-in ceremony. Now, what has happened to the Prime Minister's attitude towards the northeastern states? People will talk about that. What happens to the Look East policy? What happens to all of that? Has Prime Minister completely forgotten about it? Has he left Manipur at its own fate?
That is the exact question that even I have in my mind. What does the center want? Does it want to let Manipur be, or do they have a long-term plan for all of the Northeast? Because the other unmissable point is that turmoil in Manipur is not going to be contained within Manipur only for very much longer. I mean, already Mizoram is affected. The Nagas haven't spoken as yet, but when they do, we don't know what they're going to say about the situation. But I have also read about groups in Assam who are now threatening the Mizos for, allowing Myanmar refugees to come in and stay in Mizoram. So the whole of the Northeast is likely, to feel the impact of the Manipur turmoil. And it is so important that the Prime Minister take a decisive point and a decisive position. I don't know about the highway that was supposed to be passing through Manipur and what difference it would have made. It's part of the Look East policy, Act East policy, and the highway, God knows, it may be the cause of a lot of trouble because, again, land, etc., is involved. So no, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to your question. It seems at the moment that for the Northeast, for Manipur, there are blinkers on Delhi's eyes.
Strong words coming from you, Monadeepa. But Samir, my last question to you is that how long can BJP afford to continue to sit on this problem? It's very clear that even if they're wanting, to project themselves as doing something, but they are not doing anything. The manner in which Amit Shah is hopping around to other states without completely talking about Manipur very clearly shows that Manipur is off the radar of the central government. How long can BJP continue to do that? Because now very soon elections will start steamrolling in other states like Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan. Then again, the election narrative will build
Even
up.
neighboring Mizoram.
Yes, Mizoram as well. So how will they really tackle all of that if it's going to have a role to play?
Already there is this thing, growing resentment against the BJP and the way it's tackling the issue. And both the valley and the hills are in unison on this, that their common grudge is Prime Minister's silence, then inadequate handling of the situation. There are questions raised over the role of security forces, particularly the central forces. So and BJP needs to address these issues first. Only day before yesterday, 6 Meitei student bodies had warned that unless and until the BJP comes clear on certain allegations of taking help from Kuki militants during elections, the party will be rooted out from the state. So BJP, the resentment is growing against the BJP, and it will be difficult for the BJP to ignore it long. And if it continues to ignore it, is to its peril, it will do that. But currently, I think why BJP is not, particularly the central government, is not taking action, because they don't want to sacrifice the BJP-led government in Manipur. So, and another thing, in the valley, there is again, there is opposition to the president rule. So, to my mind, the best option would be let the BJP government continue, but they can change the leadership, because during my visit to Manipur recently, particularly in the hill areas, the resentment against Chief Minister is, is really enormous. And unless and until he is there, I don't think there can be, this peace process or reconciliation process can move forward. So first step should be, change of leadership.
Right. So change of leadership is the first thing you are saying, but quite similar to what is really happening in Kashmir. BJP keeps talking about the infrastructure journey, the development journey, but BJP doesn't think of how to reach out to the hearts of the people. And that is exactly what is happening in Manipur. The reconciliation process, nobody is talking about how to reach out to the Meiteis and the Kukis. Nobody from BJP is talking about, except for provocative statements and polarizing issues simmering on the ground. But how long will Prime Minister remain silent is the million-dollar question. Thank you so much. I'll have to end it.
Okay, can I make a last comment? Just
yes.
Last comment. So
yes.
These, what you call, silence from the center has raised a lot of eyebrows. And to my mind, this has aggravated a lot of situations. There are lots of situations that this silence from the center may be in favor of this group or maybe in favor of that group. So this silence has been perceived as some kind of, say, this group may get this and that group may not get this. And this is troubling us. So the silence has to be broken out as immediately as possible. And also, something that I wanted to raise for the last point is that how this will spiral out of Manipur is a very dangerous thing. So just before Samil told that now Mizoram has been condemned by the Assam Student Union. Just line. So now, let me add that. So if we allow this to spiral out, so to Nagaland and to Mizoram and other parts, at the most, we should do everything to address this issue of Manipur as soon as possible. Thank you.
But looking at the way all what is happening in Manipur, it could have a ripple effect on other northeastern states. And if BJP continues to remain silent, very soon it could lose its grip on all the 7 states of the Northeast. It was wonderful having you on the program, Dr. Haukip, Samir, Monideepa. It was wonderful to have you on the program. And one appeal to the viewers who are watching this interview and the panel discussion, stay tuned to the Federal, send us your feedback. Thank you so much.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.